Welcome to Astoria Film Festival Presents, our weekly half-hour program featuring our films, filmmakers, events, and the local community. As part of our series on media careers, we're speaking today with Ed Kulzer, editor at Sesame Street.
I'm originally from the suburbs of Chicago. I went to undergraduate for studio art, and I was told by a visiting artist who was there to jury the student show that I not only had to go to graduate school immediately, but to the best graduate school immediately. So I came all the way out to New York to learn the fine art of starvation, which I learned very well. I think I got straight A's in that. But I came out to the School of Visual Arts, as I said, in the computer art department, because I was interested in doing things not like painting, like a physical object, but involving computers in such a way that when people go into a space, cameras capture their motion behavior and their space, and the programming makes visual things happen as projected on a wall. So they would become a participant within it. So coming from an a fine arts background, I had absolutely no idea how to do any of that. And came out here to try to learn, and starved, amidst which I taught myself Final Cut Pro, Media 100, and After Effects, and began 15 years of squeaking a career. And
You're being very humble.
well, it was a very humbling experience. I burrow hopped and genre hopped. I did a lot of work for industrials and commercials and internal corporate stuff. I mean, all the big banks, love them or loathe them, they have a lot of internal video that faces their employees. It's not glorious work. Damn, is it pretty good paying. Not selling your soul, just paying the bills. In fact, I was at JP Morgan Chase outside on the steps when the documentarian Morgan Spurlock, he did that one wonderful Super Size Me. He interviewed me on the steps of JP Morgan Chase, and I was like covered in my baby's vomit. I was showing up to work. He was apparently looking for some kind of a soundbite from some finance guys about how they spend hundreds of dollars for a haircut. And here I am covered in baby vomit. I'm like, I'm not the guy you want to talk to. Anyways, so is everybody familiar with what a post-production facility is?
Not everybody, but probably half, I'd say, are.
Okay, so let's say in the corporate realm or in commercials, maybe even short films, it's a place where you would go and there would be agents there and maybe directors and producers and script writers, and they would envision a campaign for a client and see it all the way through development, writing, production, post-production to final release. And I became an integral part of a few different facilities. They would have me in 3 different rooms at the same time with 3 different clients. In one, I was working in Avid. In another, I was working in Final Cut Pro. On a third, I was doing After Effects stuff. And so it paid to not have all of my eggs in one basket. And I think you'll discover what's important is it's not the software you have to know. It's storytelling. It's pacing. It's having a good sense of story and a really apt capacity for communication, like so many of you were saying. Because really, any fool can punch buttons. It's really knowing what a beat is and getting a sense of humor and suspense and having a love of film and a sense of the history and what works, what doesn't work, and being courageous enough to try things out and see what fails, because you learn just as much through what doesn't work when you're editing as you do when you finally invent the light bulb and it works. There's very few things as satisfying as really making something from nothing, where you're handed just a ton of footage and a director who doesn't quite know what they want, but they have a sense and says, go to town. And you're like, what do you mean go to town? I don't want that kind of responsibility. But you spend 3 whole nights with 5 pots of coffee and all of the footage in the world. and you start putting together the building blocks. And by the time they show up, you really stink and you have to go take a shower, but you also have some really good things there. And you're able to show them 2 or 3 different assemblies that have very different feels. And they can get a sense of where they're coming from and the film or the piece that they wanted to make, that they intended to make. And they get a sense of where you, with your own eye and your own background, where you felt it should go. And then it becomes really a reciprocity. It becomes a collaborative effort where you're not just punching buttons to do what they want, but they respect you as a mind and a storyteller and a contributor. And you really can help both his vision or her vision, the director's vision or the producer's vision, come to light while injecting a little bit of you in there that otherwise would not have been a part of it. I mean, another editor sitting in the seat, they might wind up with a very different film.
Would you say, like, I've heard over and over that basically the editor is the second director. Would
Oh
you?
yeah. Right now I guess I curtailed where I'm at in my career. You probably mentioned it. Now I'm working at
Feel
Sesame
free.
Street. I'm working as one of the 3 editors of Sesame Street, which, yeah, Sesame Street, but it is so much fun. It's so much fun. And the one thing that I've learned, as much as is critical a factor in job satisfaction, is who you're working with. Really, really is. And having good rapport. Like I was just told by one of the directors, he's like, I want you to cut all of the stories that I've directed because we really get along. And it's like, that's really cool. And when you're sitting there talking with Big Bird, who's both the director and the executive producer on the thing, and he sees something that you failed to, or he says, why don't you try this? Or, hey, you just missed that there's a huge puppeteer heads in the middle of that shot. You can't use that. It was like, how did I miss that? So really, it is a collaboration. Where was I going? Yeah, I mean, working with Sesame has led to a lot of accolades outside of a lot of the job pleasure. As you probably said, it has led to 3 Emmys in about 6 years, but those are statues on a shelf, and I mean that in a very real way. They would not exist without the writers, without the performances, without the directors, the lighters, all the production staff. I mean, as an editor, you receive footage, and all we can play with are the building blocks that are given to us. And if they're made out of sand, you're not going to make a nice concrete castle. You have to have very well done things. You have to have stories that were very well written, executed very well on set. Performances had to be really good. You had to get enough takes in order to really craft the story, because in 3 of a shot, a character might end up like this, and then the next scene, they have to start like this. And if you don't have another take of them actually ending the shot like this, there's going to be a mismatch, and it's just not going to work. And you're going to have to pull something out of somewhere in order to make it work. So, anyways.
No, that's good meat.
Yeah. I guess as an editor, that's something I would really, really, to go completely in a different field, I'd really hone in continuity. It's being very hyper focused on positions and line of sight, and making sure you don't betray the way that eyesight should be going, so that you're actually breaking a scene. If you have 4 people in a room and you have the constant energy going in one direction, you can't just all of a sudden break it from another way. It's just going to feel so jarring to a viewer. You have to be very conscious of that. And a lot of that comes from studying the history both of editing and of filmmaking. Very, very important stuff. If I could go back again, I would have spent at least 5 years that I didn't have because I was in fine arts studying that. That would have been very helpful. See
So
great films.
know your films.
Know your films. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to do homework. I'm saying, hey, sit down with Netflix, watch the Criterion Collection. Give yourself a challenge. Watch 2 great films a week for a year. I'm talking international cinema. There's 100 years of astounding film, and there is so much to learn from it, both for editing and for timing and for scene construction and for writing and for, if you want to also shoot, gives such brilliant ways on how to light, where to put the camera, how to pose different characters in the same scene, how close do they need to get, how do you set mood. All of this becomes so vital when you're editing a scene because it sets the atmosphere and it sets the emotion and the tone. That's another very critical person in the post-production workflow, because when you're done editing, the piece is only halfway done. It's nowhere until you get it to a sound engineer to do the sound mix. That is so vital. And then you also have to take the footage to what's called a colorist for grading, which means they basically take every single shot and sweeten the colors and the lightness and darkness to make every single one match. Because if you're using 2 different cameras, one's a Panasonic, one's a Sony, maybe one's a Red, that footage isn't going to look the same. They're going to register light and color in different ways. So it could even look like you're shooting in different rooms, or it's just not going to look right. So if you have a colorist, they're in the software like DaVinci, and they're making everything look unified so that it's all seamless, and it can really further. They'll work with the producers, and if you're a writer / director / producer, it's you in the seat with them, trying to emote the feel that you're looking for in a scene. If you can, search for what original footage would look like without a color grade, and then with a color grade, before and after, night and day. Night and day, so much goes into it. So, but all of that, like I'm saying, is after the edit.
And you did color. You were a colorist for a while too, no?
Yeah. Let's see, after SVA, I worked at a PR firm, which was, after 5 years of starving, it was a wonderful way to have a seat at a desk making pretty much just crap. 30-second to 60-second commercials for account executives who didn't want to be bothered to sell TV. But it let me get a paycheck, and it let me, really found a life, and it gave me the time to study and to really get my feet wet in After Effects and Premiere and really get good in Final Cut Pro, so that while you're editing, you're not thinking, what button do I have to press to do this? It flows through you. It's like when you're writing and the thoughts are just streaming onto the page or onto the page. You don't even feel your fingers typing. It's your thoughts being vomited onto the screen. That can be editing, where you're just thinking, all right, this has to be a little bit to the left, this has to be shorter, and you're just thinking while you're doing it, and you're in the flow, and it just feels terrific to be storytelling like that. And when you're with directors and producers, and they're doing a review, and they're going to have things they want you to change, but you anticipate that and are actually working on it before they ask you to, then you show it down like, oh, yeah, do that, yeah. They appreciate that. If I recall, that movie has a lot to do with jazz.
Yes.
And that's a music form that was developed specifically for that. Yep. No form, just flow.
So is there such a thing as fix it in post? Is that a reality?
That's a career.
I mean, I know it's said constantly, but how about actually implementing?
Oh God,
What
yes.
can be fixed in post and what cannot be fixed in post?
Um, so much can be fixed in post. Let's say you're doing you're not, now that motion graphics are as advanced as they are. I don't want to say this because I'm like putting a stake in my own heart, but almost anything can be fixed in post if you have the time and the money. Because when I'm sitting at my chair editing at Sesame Street, the schedulers from our department, they know that I am worth my salary divided by 365 divided by 8 hours a day. And there could be 12 different projects vying for my worth that day. They have to decide what to spend me on. That could be things for our show. It could be things for other departments. And if there are, case in point, in the middle of one shot for the story that we're doing right now, there was a puppeteer's head that popped up really high in the screen between two of the puppets as they're shooting. Yay, well, you can't do that. You know, that HBO will say, get out of here. No, you can't have that. That betrays that there's a puppeteer there. You either have to use a different shot or get that going. So I don't have the physical time to fix that in post, because that's actually really detailed work. You guys familiar with rotoscoping? I'm sorry.
The aha video?
Rotoscoping can be a nightmare, but some of the tools are getting better in After Effects, but it's still very labor intensive. And that one shot with the puppeteer could take me 3 days, and there's no guarantee after doing a day and a half of work if it's going to turn out good enough, or if at the very beginning we should have just taken it out of the house and given it to given it to an artist who focuses. That's what they do. They do that kind of work, because there are specialists. There are generalists who do a lot of everything. I'm not a genius in After Effects, but I can do a lot. So if there's something that really has to be done professionally or very, very motion graphics heavy, we'll give that to somebody else, because my time has to be spent on other stuff. 2000, 2007, 2008, there was a financial crisis. And right before that, there was a big writer's strike. And our business shed jobs like crazy because the writers said, no, we're going on strike. And so starting, from there's writers, and then there's production, and then there's post-production and everything. So if the stem of the river blocks at the writing stage, nothing comes through. And so basically television production stopped until the writers got the better deal that they were looking for. And so it was really tough to find work. I wound up getting in at JP Morgan Chase for a year, and it was corporate work, and it's not all that challenging. It can be, because they still want to storytell really well. And depending on, like, I was also doing work at Goldman Sachs. Both of them, very good paychecks, very professional. They're not trying to, they're not trying to make crap. They're trying to make really good stuff because it makes them look good. They're very prestigious, and they want their materials to look film-like. They want it to be high quality. And so although the ultimate purpose is not art, it's still really high quality. And so you're dealing with good footage. You're dealing with the need to tell story for a specific reason. And so you're still exercising those muscles that you will take to other avenues. It may not be, and you're not going to get an Oscar for a series that you make telling the employees about their new mortgage pipeline. But you're going to find ways to cut together B-roll and different types of shots and interview, and how to overlay things over a voiceover, and the relative levels of how to put voice versus vocals versus sound effects versus music. and how to cut music together in order to fit a duration video that you need when the actual piece of music is 20 minutes long. There's a lot you can learn even doing work that isn't what puts you in the zone. So don't think of it as, as selling out. It's work.
So I'm just wondering, what is the average workday? I assume it's always different every day because editing is so spontaneous, but what is like the process like when you first get that like dump of footage to the second you deliver to the mix or the colorist?
It's a great question. The pipeline depends on the place. Everybody's got their own thing. I have, our department has an assistant editor who does so much of the preparatory work that you'd think of. Let me get that. We shoot at Kaufman Astoria. That's where our set is at, which is like a mile down the road from me. And all of the footage comes on huge drives, and he receives all the footage, automatically transcodes it to a lower resolution, sets up a project with proxies. Are you familiar with what proxies are? Okay, so he sets up the proxies, sets up all the multi-clips. We already have the scripts. We have the PA scripts from the day that include the director's notes, their by takes, their good alternate takes, and their suggestions on how they want it to flow together. So the work that I do at Sesame isn't all that free form. We'll edit it together as per the script and as per the director's intent. And the story might come to be 14, 15 minutes long, when in the show there's room for 9 minutes. So once I get a cut, well, now with COVID, everybody's remote. I'm working from home. The two other editors are working from home. Thank God for really fast upload and download speed, so I can get 100 gigabytes like that. We're uploading and downloading all the footage. We're shooting 4K. Sometimes we're shooting 8K. So we cut everything together. I upload a draft to Frame.io or a different kind of an interface and send a link to the directors to look at. They'll have suggestions. We'll work back and forth. After it's approved, it goes to Big Bird in order to get his puppet captain pass. He has his say, and then it goes to the producers who ultimately have their say. Rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds and rounds of revisions, because there will always be 20 people. And then the next person sees it and they want to change it completely again to what you originally had in the first place. And you kind of have to, again, go with the flow of that.
Wait, is Big Bird still alive? He's not, is he?
He's not. He died a couple of years ago. His protege, Matt Vogel, now wears the suit. And he's also a director and a producer in his own right.
Gotcha. Okay.
He's really cool. He's fun to work with. Let's see. So part of my day that is a challenge for me, coming from where I am, is juggling. I mean, as much as you want to focus on one story, you're not focusing on one story. You have 6 projects going on at once, and at the drop of a hat, you need to know where one left off and where you're waiting for the notes from somebody on another project that's coming in, and when you're waiting for graphic shots from a third one, and what is already at the audio mixer, because when that's ready, you have to put that in right away and get a master made and get that off to be QC checked. You have to really keep track of what's on your plate and what status each of your projects are on, because there is never going to be a time when you can sit back and work on one thing. Does not happen. Doesn't happen.
Is that something your assistant editor manages for you? Is that something you have to manage?
Thank goodness in the infrastructure of our department, there's the 3 editors, the assistant editor, a scheduler, then like a department manager, and then a department head. The department manager is basically the quarterback and tells us, okay, today, these are your 3 priorities. Where are you in this project? Okay, good, get that done. And then some emergency project for another department comes in. They're like, throw everything to the 9 winds, you turn it on this. Or we have to get a sizzle reel done on the Martin Luther King Day stuff that we just got the footage in. We need a 90-second cut in 3 hours, go. It's got to be to the some gala someplace with incredibly important people, go. And so you have to be, it's been a challenge for me to keep very good track of where all of your projects are at, the stage that everything's at, because otherwise it's so easy to let something get passed, and maybe the last draft of a piece from an animator, you didn't happen to download it because you just, and so you're finalizing a thing and you send it off. The producers look at it and say, wait, whoa, what is this? We had decided not to go with that little, that shirt was supposed to be pink. And it's like, oh yeah, I didn't get that and put it in. So that's
Is there any type of like management tool that helps with that type of tracking? Or how do you keep track of where you are with your projects and all that? Is it mental? Is it like, or do you have a notebook?
It's easy to go mental. There's a lot of different software, I imagine. I hadn't been using any of it, which is kind of why I was running into problems. You know what has worked for me? I'm a guy who really likes tactile stuff, so I prefer to write, but that doesn't work for me because you close the page, it's out of sight, out of mind. I actually use stickies on the desktop. I have one long sticky where I put the date and the bullet points of where, and I have a sticky for each of the different projects I'm working on, and I just keep letting it scroll down, and I put the most recent stuff at the top. Put the text in red when it's like something that's due, put a big green done on it if it's something that's out of your hands, and then you at the end of the day you put what you can expect, what you're expecting, or what's due the next day, or you put on that there's going to be a really big meeting that you have to make sure that you're going to be there for. Here's the Zoom address. And so just keeping on track of that stuff really has helped me. And I know we're talking about editing, but this really is a part of it. Organization. Anybody who's done a project where you have 3 weeks of shoots and ungodly amounts of clips. Have you ever opened up an editing project or in Premiere or Avid or anything, and all of the clips are labeled untitled clip 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or untitled sequence 1 through 32? You go nuts. You go absolutely nuts, and it wastes your time because you're going to have to keep scanning through everything. So bin everything really well. Find a method of organization that works for you while you're editing. It is so vital. It'll save you so much time and frustration. That really is an enormous key, keeping organized, both in the projects and on your drives. Keep your media in a way that you know where to look for it. Something that was, a voiceover clip that you recorded really quick shouldn't be in a folder where there are some graphic files for a project you did 3 years ago. You've got to make sure that it's in the right place, because when it comes time to archive, you have to take everything from a given project and set it away on a drive that goes away in order to preserve your active space. If there's a change that has to be made a few months down the line, you have to be able to bring that project back alive. And if you're missing some of the Photoshop images that you made, you're kind of screwed. So you really have to be careful about including, keeping everything organized and making sure it's all together, no loose, If you do a render in After Effects, so you have an animation as its own movie, you have to keep that project. You have to keep that After Effects project and all the little bits that went inside of it, just in case they need something changed.
Other questions? Andy?
I was actually wondering what like hardware do you have to like manage and like do all that you need to do?
Um, I've got 3 screens and God, I wish I could pick up the
I was gonna
camera.
say.
Like this. Um, our gear gets really expensive. It really, really does. I've got a monitor. Um, remember I was talking about color grading? It's kind of like painting the footage. Well, when you're doing stuff for broadcast, or if you're going to HBO or any place, it has to be what they call broadcast legal. And so not only do the shots have to look right, they have to be a certain level of brightness and darkness and chroma. The reason I'm saying this is there's a monitor that you have to have that is able to show that very precisely. And there could be software or hardware solutions to tell you if everything is within legal bounds. So software is big. I need one of those monitors. You need, you're familiar with Aja, or Blackmagic? So 2 really big companies. Blackmagic you'll know because they also, I think, now have their own camera. They've got the Blackmagic camera, which is awesome. But they also have hardware. So I have my computer. Plugged into my computer are all my hard drives and something called the Aja IO 4K. It's an input-output device. Going out from that, I have the cords going out to my Genelec speakers, which are called audio monitors, which are also plugged into my Mackie mixer, so that if I have 16 channels of audio, I can route them differently. And if I have a bunch of different speakers, I can, really experience the sound in the space that you need. For my home setup, that's all I need. But at work, we have a dedicated room for 5.1 or 7.1 stereo surround. That's really getting technical and beyond the reach of what we need to go into. Oh, I also have a microphone with a pop screen, one of those, it's like a little booth for doing some at-home
You
recording.
gave me one of those for the Boys and Girls Club, right? The foam, like,
Yep.
it's kind of like a shield that makes
That's
the
what they
sound
call it. Yeah,
kind of,
that's what
it
they call it.
consolidates the sound in front of you.
So
your
even when
sound
we
is
have,
bouncing.
even when we have our voiceovers from kids for like the stuff that you'd hear during an animation or something, they're now doing it at their homes with their own equipment, and they have those set up. Because if you're doing voiceover, don't do it in your bathroom. Because it's an old saying, but garbage in, garbage out. Dude, garbage in, garbage out. There is no way to cure echo like that unless you spend the money and go to a real quality audio mixer, which is a person or a sound composer. But they'll throw it into Pro Tools and try to fix what you gave them. But again, don't fix it in post. Spend the time to really learn how to do audio well. That little booth is good enough for what I'm doing. But if I were doing like actual professional voiceover, that wouldn't be good enough.
Other questions? Joseph?
I was wondering what the change of the workspace was like for you, like when COVID kicked in, and I don't know what the specs were of like the computers that you worked with, like I guess back at the studio at Sesame Street, but did you have to like buy any new software? Like, did you always make proxies for your projects, or were the computers strong enough to handle like that much like resolution and all that stuff? And like, what was that transition like for you?
Well, first place, did Sesame outfit you with their home studio?
Well, I basically have my Sesame Studio. Back in, as I said, there were the 3 editors. We kind of raided our studios like hungry wolves. And the one guy had his Tesla there. And we took our monitors, we took our garbage cans, our Mac Pros. We didn't take our grading monitors, but the Aja IO, our mixers, they all came from work. We just we're not going back to work. And so we've been editing from home for a year. we just grabbed it and took it home. And we didn't have our tech guys come to set it up for us because I already had my own editing set up here. But my computer's really old and falling apart, and it wasn't up to the task of doing this. So in terms of what's different, we were using proxies. We still are using proxies. Big difference is shared data. So at work, everybody's connected by fiber. I'm on the 3rd floor. I'm kind of on Pluto, where the other 2 editors are in the big editing suite in the post-production office. But we're all connected to a big old thing it's called the Evo. I guess Evo might be a company, but it's just a whole bunch of drives rated together for redundancy and speed. And that's where we house all of our footage and all of our masters and all of our graphics and all of the library stuff that we constantly have to use. All those letters and numbers of the day that you see in our episodes, all those masters are kept in file structures there. And 40 seasons worth of films from external vendors. We'll get an episode rundown. It'll say that the 22 minutes has to be made of this and this and this and this and this specific piece. We just go to the Evo or up to archives and pull it down and grab it. Now we aren't at the office connected through a cord. We took enormous hard drives from the office with as much of the footage, actually the low-res proxy files. I'll get to that in a second. The low-res proxy files from the office as much as would fit on these drives as fast as we could get it there, because we wanted to get stuff and get out of there. Let's see. So there's also software now where you can remote in. So we can remote into our computers at the office and kind of use a company or a website called Media Shuttle to take the footage that's there on the Evo at work and email ourselves a link to it so that I can just access it from here and download. Because I've got a gigabit Ethernet now from home, again, it goes really fast. And so that's how we are able to get all of the stuff that we need in order to keep working. So I'm working on proxies or low-res files.
1 second. Andy just asked, is Evo like SSD?
Let's say SSD is a single disk. It's like a little brick, and it might be 2 terabytes, however many terabytes. Evo would be 100 of them in a row, all connected together, and in such a way that it combines all their space and makes it secure so that if one of them dies or goes corrupt, none of the data is actually lost, because all of the data is kind of roaming among all of the drives, and it's in there twice or 3 times, so that if 1 drive, 2 drives, 3 drives, 4 drives fail, everything is still cool. Also, never just leave your footage in one spot. It's exactly like a server. That's precisely what
it's a server farm, basically.
Exactly. And obviously, because we were connected by fiber, or I guess Ethernet, at the office, I don't have a cable running 4 miles to Central Park West here to Astoria, but I do have a gigabit Ethernet, and so I can upload and download everything when I go through whatever it is, the software that we have. I think I'm using Splashtop, where I can remote into my computer there, go into the Evo, locate the files that I need, and ship it to myself here. So that's kind of how we've been operating. But in order to take what we're editing while projects are still active and live, and we have to go for reviews, again, we just do it through a website infrastructure called Frame.io, which is actually really cool now because it works inside of Premiere as well. So,
oh, really?
Oh God, it's fantastic. So like you'll be in Premiere working in your thing, and it has its own pane, kind of like the project pane or the effects panel. It's just a Frame.io panel that you can download for free from. It's just like in Creative Cloud in the marketplace or something. And so you can just say upload, and your sequence into out will just be automatically uploaded to the folder where the producers and the director can just go immediately and review what we've done. And
Oh,
then
that's great.
they'll leave notes at markers in your timeline, and you can export those markers directly back into your timeline in Premiere. So you know exactly where it is. You know, the director might say, end this shot at this point and extend it backwards. And all of a sudden that appears in your timeline. So there's no ambiguity there. There's no chance to for something to slip in miscommunication. It's very handy. And so while we aren't able anymore to have the producers and the director sitting behind me in a review session, which I really miss, because those are such great times in this. You really get to know the people. But without that now, we are able to review like this. And then we have kind of like Zoom sessions where we'll talk about a piece that we've all watched, and they will have left their notes, and I'll start doing some of the things, and they might have a question as to something I'll work, then I'll work really fast, export it really fast, and upload it into the comments section. They can just watch it. They're like, yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. That's good.